I've got a lot of receipts tonight to show you about where I believe we are in this timeline, and I believe that by the end of tonight's show, at least one other person will agree with me because I have a lot of data here. So, and I think it's pretty compelling. First of all, we're going to talk about the Revelation 12 sign. We're going to look at how it's a dual announcement, how it covers both the birth and the return of the Messiah. And then we're going to talk about Revelation 4 through 5, and I'm going to show you how I believe that it's showing us a celestial clock. And that by understanding that it's a celestial clock, you can identify the seals being opened. And then we're going to get into talking about the actual seals that I believe are opened, the ones that are going to be opened, and what they mean. So seals 1 through 4, they each have a living creature associated with them, but 5, 6, and 7 don't. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight too. So getting into this, the first thing we need to cover is that signs do not equal astrology. I hear this a lot anytime I talk about the stars. People who have been schooled or raised to believe that anytime you talk about a constellation or the zodiac or the ecliptic, that you're dealing with witchcraft and magic. That's not the case at all. And you'll see in Genesis 1:14, it says, "Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years." This word signs here is the Hebrew word moedim. It means appointed times. So everybody knows this. I mean, we all use the sun and the moon to separate 24-hour periods of time. We talked about this with NDEs just the other day, right? That a common thread with NDEs is the absence of comprehending time. And that makes sense. If you don't have the sun and moon dictating, where one day starts and another day ends, one day ends and another day starts, then you lose track of time. We've also seen this, like Mr. Beast did a video recently where he was in a padded room for a week, had no idea how long he was in there. And, after a day or two, he thought it had been a week,
Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if we could do something like that, like Mr. Beast does, but for like helping people more, like helping the homeless and stuff like that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I just get caught up on his name.
Mr. Beast, like hey, maybe he is the beast. We've never actually considered maybe he is the Antichrist.
He's of age, and you're right. Everybody loves him.
Need to do a video on that. We know that God set the sun, moon, and stars for signs, seasons, days, and years. Comfortable with using it for days and years, and even seasons. It's the signs and the seasons. Maybe it's the word seasons might be moedim. Can't remember now that I'm thinking about it. Signs, I think seasons is actually moedim, which is appointed times, because signs is significant events. Signs are not astrology. They're actually the first purpose for the sun, moon, and stars. So what we're looking at is we're looking at the signs in the heaven and how they actually declare his handiwork. So in Psalm 19, verses 1 through 6, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard." Right? Everybody sees the sun, moon, and stars. So there's nowhere that their voice is not heard. Now, obviously, this is a figure of speech. They don't literally utter speech, and they don't literally have a voice. You get the point that everybody can see them. Everybody uses them. You know what month it is by what constellation the sun is in. Whether you actively look for that, most people have, a watch or a phone that tells them what month it is, but that's where it comes from. That's how we know what month we're in, is the sun is in a particular section of the sky. So here's another thing. Jesus even got after people when he was preaching and teaching. In Luke 12:54 and 56, he said, "Then he also said to the multitudes, whenever you see a cloud rising out of the west, immediately you say, a shower is coming, and so it is. And when you see the south wind blow, you say, there will be hot weather, and there is. Hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky and of the earth, but how is it you do not discern this time?" I'm going to show you in the next slide here how the Magi knew when Jesus had been born. This is him at 30 years old, talking to the people who should have known better. They should have known that he was born and that he was there, that the Son of Man was there, that the Son of God was in their midst. And he's correcting them. There's Pharisees and lawyers who are in this crowd. The people who should have known better were in this crowd. He gets after him. You can tell by observing the sky, the weather. Why can't you tell what time on God's timetable? It's because that knowledge had been lost and it had been shrouded. I don't know, maybe they believed it was witchcraft and astrology back then too. Let's actually look at some signs. You can look this up on Google. This is a pretty common understanding that Jesus was born September 11th, 3 BC. So this is based on more than just this sign. It's also based on the work of Josephus, who was a historian during this age that kept track of the stars, kept track of, history. This is a pretty well documented thing. I'm not actually going to get into why this is the date of his birthday. This sign is, they noticed that this sign actually happened on the day that he was born in conjunction with other data that they used. The sign is in Revelation 12, 1 and 2. It says, "Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth." So this is what the sky looked like. September 11th, 3 BC, if you looked up in the sky, this is what you would have seen. Down here, I got the date. So it's a -2 because they count 0 as 1. So this is actually 3 BC. So
That's so cool.
But yeah, so, and you can see you've got, a woman who's clothed with the sun, which the sun's right here. The moon is under her feet. So this is only partially part of this because all you have is clothed with the sun with the moon under her feet. She does not have a garland of 12 stars. And
Hey,
she is not in labor.
There was a question before you went any further. It said, I thought Jesus was born in the spring as lambs were born in the spring. I just thought it was a relevant question for you.
Yeah, so this actually lines up with Tishri 1, which is not equivalent to our September. So you might be thinking that because we're on this side of the world that, we're in the falls. You got to remember that this was in Bethlehem. So
Right.
It would have been a different season.
And the calendar's totally different also.
Yeah, there's no crown of 12 stars here, but what got the Magi's attention was Jupiter in conjunction with Regulus. So Jupiter represents the Messiah and Regulus represents the king. This was saying that the king had been born. And the Magi would have known that. And this is how they knew that he had been born and to start preparing for their journey. Now, they didn't go see him the day he was born. Most people miss that little detail. They actually had to put together an entourage and go travel to him. When they had when they'd gone to Herod and talked to Herod, the reason why he killed the children 2 years old and under was because that's the window of which they had told him that the child would be around 2 years old. So Herod was making an effort to eliminate the Messiah based on the information he would have gathered from the Magi. So what does clothed with the sun mean? This is something I learned last year, I think it was. I'm going to illustrate this so it's really clear. So when you're looking up at the sky, remember how I said that you know what month it is by which constellation the sun is in? That is what clothed with the sun means. It means that the sun is in a constellation. So right here you have Virgo. The sun is in Virgo. It means she's clothed with the sun. Which means you wouldn't be able to see the constellation. So like if you were looking, if the Earth weren't here and if these pictographs were actually in the sky, which obviously they're not, pictographs are just intended to mark the section of the sky.
Yeah.
And they've been the same for a very long time. Only a couple of them have changed. There's a guy named Ptolemy who put together constellations a couple of centuries ago, the original 48 constellations. Now, today we have 88 constellations, which a lot of them are from NASA and stuff like that, so they're completely meaningless. But the original 48 were gathered from historical records from different civilizations and cultures and stuff like that. But anyway, so this is what it means to be clothed in the sun. Now let's look at, this is what I call the anchor point. So this is, again, Revelation 12, 1 and 2. This sign happened on September 23rd, 2017. And the reason why I'm showing you these is because I'm setting a precedent to know that we're in the end time based on these signs. This sign happened on September 23rd, 2017. This one does actually include every single aspect that's written in Revelation 12, 1 and 2. So you have the crown of 12 stars, because there's 9 stars in Leo, and there's 3 planets that were right here in this section of space. Virgo is clothed with the sun. We just talked about what that meant. The moon is under her feet. And this is what's unique, is Jupiter was in retrograde in this constellation, which retrograde means it just basically stays in position while the other stars move. So it stayed in position for 42 months, for 42 weeks. So 9 months it stayed here in position, which is the gestation period for a child. So this sign perfectly matches the Revelation 12:1 and 2 sign. So you can tell that it's similar to the one that announced when he was born. But then again, it happened on September 3rd. A lot of people thought that this was going to be the rapture, myself included, because there was an eclipse a month before this. Most everybody probably remembers the eclipse because it was most everybody in the United States, because it was in America, and it was the one that it was. I don't think we had an eclipse in a really long time, and everybody was going out with their
Yeah, it
glasses.
was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a really big deal. This happened 1 month after that. So it was a pretty big deal. And there's a lot of people who thought that this was going to be the rapture. But considering where we are now, obviously it wasn't the rapture, unless we're in heaven, which there's still bad things happening. And I don't think we're in heaven.
No,
That
we're
doesn't
not in
seem like
heaven.
it's been swallowed up in victory. So what does this mean? So one thing that we can gather from this now, one thing I haven't said about this yet is that this sign never, ever happens. Now, I've gone, and not just me, a lot of people have verified this. Thousands of people have verified this. This particular alignment never happens within a 14,000 year period of time. I've gone backwards 7 years, and I've gone forward 7 years into the future using software that calculates the positions of the stars. This day here where this happens is the only day in 14,000 years that this sign happens. There's not another one that matches the scripture. There are similar signs, similar to the announcement of his birth, but as far as matching the full description given in Revelation 12:1 and 2, this is the only day that happens.
And keep in mind, Watchful has done an intense amount of research on this. So he has a reason for everything that he's saying, and he's building up to the point to explain the seals and the meanings behind everything. All of his projections on the seals are all associated with very significant alignments in the heavens. So this is why he's explaining this up front, because it verifies, it's extra verification on his thesis.
So what can we gather from this? So you have a sign that only happens one time on one particular date. To me, it says that this is an anchor point. We have something that was written thousands of years ago that talks about a sign that's going to happen in the future. We're literally living during that period of time when that sign happened. So to me, that's an anchor point to scripture, so that we should pay attention to what's written in that section of scripture and consider it relevant to our day and time. So one of the principles of hermeneutics is to get to who a letter or a book is addressed to correct. This tells us that the book of Revelation is addressed to our day and age, because we have an anchor point in that book. So it's from that perspective that we should consider the events that are written in the book of Revelation.
And just like Enoch says as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think of back in Daniel, he says the seal of he got a vision of the end times, and the angel told him, seal up the book until men go to and fro and knowledge is increased. We would not be able to verify this without computers. I mean, there might be some.
No, you're right.
Maybe there's some kind of charts that they had going back to do calculations. But with the ease that we can calculate this today, it's hard to imagine they would have been able to do that without technology.
Which is why they, in the book of Daniel, I believe it is, that it says, it's pretty clear that knowledge will increase and our ability to understand this stuff will reveal these signs. So their ability to be revealed would be next to impossible without the knowledge increased, along with the travel to and fro from around the world and whatnot. So there's a lot of significant data to his presentation. But anyways, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'd say, so it seems like we're all in agreement that this is indicating that the book of Revelation is highly likely addressed to us, because you've got a sign that happens only one time ever. So there's a good chance that what's written in there is written for us to learn from, right? Okay, so here's another slide of the clothed in the sun, just another perspective. So I thought this one was interesting. Stellarium really makes Virgo clothed with the sun. It almost blots her out. To answer somebody's question, what software I use? Yes, this is using Stellarium. Okay, so this is just interesting that I wrote this just for data purposes. He was born on Monday, September 11th, 3 BC, most likely. The records that I've read in regards to his birth have it narrowed down to an 83-minute period of time. That's how much data they have about when he was born. So there's a high likelihood that this is accurate based on historical records, not just scripture and the stars, but historical records as well. So he was most likely born on Monday, September 11th, and this sign happened on September 23rd, 2017. So that's a 2019 years separation in 12 days. So
He said September
2019 years.
11th.
That was when he was born. Yeah.
But I'm just making the connection to a very historical date. Yeah.
Yeah. September 11th, 2000 was when, America was attacked. It's interesting. I don't know if I put it into the slides, but I actually looked up the sign on that day.
I think it was 2001.
Oh, 2001. So I looked up the wrong sign if I put it in here.
I could be wrong.
I was looking at it and I was just like, oh, there's nothing that this doesn't really scream anything to me. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Right. So we're done with the foundation. So that was the anchor for basically identifying that we are very likely in the end times. So we have a sign, which remember, Genesis 1:14, the whole purpose of the sun, moon, and stars, signs, appointed times, days, and years, right? So this is a sign. So this is literally a pinpoint in God's calendar.